Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. David Baer here. And let me just give you a little bit of background. In 1994, the very first known banner ad showed up online. It was on a website called Hotwired. I think this is now wired.com, but hotwired.com. Um, I was gonna give my guest bonus points if he knew what the ad was for, but I don't want to. I'll save him the embarrassment in case he doesn't know, and I'll tell
I
you
don't
it
know.
was for AT&T.
Oh, interesting.
Couple years later, a company called DoubleClick, which is now owned by Alphabet or Google, that got founded, and then this other company called Google was founded a couple years after that. Let's fast forward a little bit more into the early 2000s. 2003, there were two notable things. Number one, a company called LinkedIn launched. But more notable than that, today's guest, Robert Brill. I almost like did a double take on your last name there. He got into the business of advertising. And so he's got a perspective over now 2 decades in the world of advertising and media buying. For those of you who don't know the nomenclature of our world, that I think is going to be really insightful. And so I want to understand a little bit in context around sort of the history for the last 20 or so years of media buying and that
Yeah.
landscape, and also some of the sort of foundational lessons that he has to share with us. So, hey, Robert, welcome.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate it. This is a really cool setup, and I'm always happy to geek out on the intricacies of media buying.
Yeah, indeed. So, in insider knowledge on like what just happened there. So, I do this podcast like 2 or 3 times a week. I'll record one, and then I'll kind of like be looking at some other web pages. And as soon as I had to introduce you, I were here on Zoom. I hovered over your video, and your first name was there, and I was like, "What's his last name? I gotta remember it quickly." So.
Yeah, that's no
Thank you
problem.
very much for as I've learned from some of your shorts that you've made,
Hmm.
you just go by Robert. Robert, my your what is it, media buying friend? Is that the
Yeah, your friend in media buying.
that's it. Okay, excellent. So tell me a little bit about for folks who don't know what the world of media buying is. I sort of
Yeah,
gave, a general intro to it, but
yeah,
what is media buying, and do you know sort of the history of it? Because it used to be, when there was a newspaper or a radio station or a magazine that you would go directly to the platform and buy, a place ad or a space ad, excuse me, or the media would be an interaction directly with
yeah.
where you were placing the ad. And obviously that's changed over time.
100%. And the contracts were called insertion orders, abbreviated to IOs. So we still talk about IOs. We have to call them contracts. Yeah, I mean, so my very first job in advertising, well, my first career job in advertising it was in 2003. Worked at Universal Music doing social marketing, but then it was called guerrilla marketing because social media wasn't a thing yet. First advertising job was 2004 at Universal McCann, and we would run media campaigns and we'd sign contracts with publishers, New York Times, Fandango, whoever else. Yahoo was a big one at that point. Yeah, and it was a very different world. You'd have lunches and dinners at places like Spago, which is great, and you talk about stuff, and then you'd have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars to spend, and they were vying for those marketing and advertising dollars.
Mhm.
And you'd negotiate added value, special deals, takeovers, editorial articles, whatever the case is, and you'd go to more lunches and more dinners and get more basketball games and baseball games and sneakers and etc. And you'd all pat yourselves on the back on a job well done. And the success or failure of the campaign was, did the movie open or did it not open? Was it number one for the weekend or was it not? Those were the good old days. And when I was really fortunate to be hired at Universal McCann because I was, when you look at the caliber of people working there, I mean, the one of the ladies who started around the same time as I did within the same week, She was the president of USC's student union, so student body the year prior. And I was just like trying to hang on for dear life, trying to graduate from college. And yeah, and then in 20 around for the big agencies, 2008, 2009 was the big change in programmatic, but for smaller agencies, midsize around 2010, where you'd use automated systems to buy advertising space such that it became far easier to buy larger chunks of advertising inventory and you'd buy on an auction. And
Mhm.
that's really where I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to kind of like work in that space pretty aggressively. And that's, that's a big part of how we started our business at Brill Media is programmatic media buying using data targeting and tech to buy advertising space. Benefit far more efficient, drawback far fewer dinners and lunches.
You said something in there that I want to circle back to, and I can appreciate that. Obviously, the big money Madison Avenue style relationships, or the Mad Men sort of feel that you had from serving the client and working on these big projects in that world. It does exist still, but
Yeah,
it's really sort of the um legacy media, I guess, the print media, and then probably there's some digital stuff
yeah,
that is incorporated into all of that these days. But you said something about how you measured success in that world. And
yeah,
and this is, I think, one of the challenges in a space like the legacy media where we don't really have the ability to measure success quite the same way that you have at your fingertips now with all of the data that's available to you.
yeah,
Right. And so I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit.
yeah. I mean, look, I think I like to believe that whether you're a large organization where I've worked on ConocoPhillips when it was a Fortune 3 or Fortune 4, that Hershey's, Toshiba, PetSmart, Bacardi. I like to believe that those organizations have the ability to be as nimble and data oriented as we are. It's possible. The challenge is you have different types of motivations and executives and biases for or against certain targeting. So I believe it's possible. But look, I'll tell you what we do. What we do is we place pixels on websites. We use websites and apps. We use attribution systems, and we really understand to a very granular level whether or not $1 in results in 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, $60 back. And we do get those $60 results or return on ad spend in certain cases. Um, but it's a matter of having a system in place to measure. And one of the biggest challenges that agencies, we're a white label for other agencies, and creative shops work with us, strategy firms, etc. And it's actually in the benefit of the agency to have more attribution, not less, because it proves the work that we do.
Mhm.
It's also certainly in the benefit of the advertiser, the organization at large, and also the individuals who are important to ensuring that their job is retained for the next few years, right? Like CMOs, brand managers, directors of media, etc. It's important for them to prove their worth, to prove that when they run advertising, that is successful. So all around, it benefits everyone to understand what media works, what doesn't. And that's a big part of the benefit or the philosophy that we espouse for our clients. Ensure that you are tracking and don't launch the campaign unless you're tracking effectively. Then it gets more complicated. There's source of truth reporting that you can look at, which makes it a little bit more um, top line,
Mhm.
but you can correlate it back to campaign effectiveness. Correlation, not causation, doesn't mean it's the same thing, but it could be. And then for clients that have far more money, anywhere from $20,000 a year to hundreds of thousands a year, looking at customer data platforms, attribution and analytics platforms, and tying all that together. That's a more sophisticated approach. But at the end of the day, you've got to track. Likes, comments, and shares don't pay the bills.
So true. a- and I think I'm glad that you sort of talked about the top line numbers and comparing one thing to another because in your discussion there, I was thinking about two things. I was thinking, first of all, we didn't have the ability to track as well as we do now,
Hmm.
when there was no digital tracking
Right.
of the ads. But somebody like um, Rosser Reeves, who ran the Ted Bates agency back in the 60s, he wrote this book called Reality in Advertising, where he talked about how do you actually track the success of ads and campaigns
Right.
that are happening in broader markets with larger organizations. And a lot of what he points out in that book is actually that the businesses don't pay any attention to it. So we're probably paying a lot more attention these days, or we have access to pay more attention. Then there's this other challenge that I think exists in the world in which you play, which is that there's all kinds of potential for misreporting data or bots or some of the other things that, that happen when technology gets involved. But if we're looking at things sort of overall, yes, even though we have that mischief happening, if it's happening consistently across the board, we know which campaigns, which creatives, which et cetera are going to be better for our client campaigns versus others. And I wonder, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are number one, I think there's too many people not looking at business fundamentals. I mean, look at business models. Look at Uber and Lyft and these venture-backed companies who spend a decade or more being not profitable, but being highly valued because their business, every time you take a Uber or Lyft ride, you're actually getting a ride that's subsidized by a venture capitalist. Instead of paying $30, you pay $22. So that you're earning back $8 on the back of this venture capital initiative, right? So, it depends on the game that people are playing, right? So you need to understand the motivations. And I think motivations are a big part of the equation here because, you know, I've learned that over time, like who the person who we work with has different motivations, right? Like the owner of the business probably wants money in, but the CMO or the brand manager wants a bonus, and
Mm,
they're going to organize their system such that they are successful for the incentives they've been given. I had one client many years ago who my understanding was if they don't spend the money, they don't get the bonus, and they don't get as big of a budget next year.
yes.
That's a very different motivation than we need top line sales or we need bottom line profit.
Hmm.
So number one, it's important to understand the motivation of the people you're working with and do what they want you to do and be effective at that. Um, I think source of truth sales is incredibly important because you can run advertising campaigns that actually diminish your source of truth sales. You think you're growing your business, but what you're actually doing is playing a game of, I forgot that game where it's where you move the cups around and you're just moving the cups around. The attribution, the conversions would have been there anyway,
Hmm.
but now Facebook is getting the conversions. Last year was Google who got the conversions, and it's really important to understand that advertising needs to actually grow the bottom line of the business, not just take credit for the sales that would have likely come in anyway.
Can you explain what you mean when you say source of truth? Give me an example of what that looks like and where we look and where we're not necessarily getting accurate information.
100%. Source of truth is going to be what does your accounting team see? Like,
Okay.
like if you're doing e-commerce, how many orders did you get on a particular day? And what's the value of those orders? Like that's a very baseline metric to look at. Like,
Mhm.
is your business growing? And over time, over the days, the weeks, and the months, are your sales growing? You're putting money into advertising and marketing. Are your sales growing? Like that's a very foundational like metric to look at.
Yeah. You bring this up at an interesting point in time. We're recording this at the end of 2023, and over this year in particular, we've seen a big shift in sort of mid and large size companies um, moving away from the chief marketing officer, and in lieu of that role, putting in somebody who is the chief revenue
Mhm.
officer. And I think that speaks to the point that you just made, is that maybe revenue, the result may be more important than what is the marketing activity or tactic that you're engaging in.
100%. And, for all the attribution and conversion tracking that we have available, the reality is that cookies have started to go away. It's harder for advertisers to track where their sales originate from. And the reality is that we have to go back to fundamentals. The fundamentals are the following. When we had three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, we ran a bunch of ads, a lot, and people bought stuff. Now we have a ton of channels, but the structure and the framework remains. Generate demand, influence that demand with different types of creative, and then at the bottom of the funnel, tell people to buy your stuff right now. If you don't feed the top of the funnel, if you don't generate new demand, you're going to run out of people to sell stuff to. And that's a foundational component, and a lot of people call that brand, the idea that people are familiar with you and they know what you stand for, and they're going to be interested in buying if you just remind them to buy. So so it's kind of like we're going back to a time where you need to understand the foundational elements of marketing and advertising to drive sales. And sure, there are ways to track um, the consumer journey and track that, your average message point is, people have seen your ads 15 or 20 times and they've interacted with your email marketing 3 times and they've been to your website 7 times or whatever those metrics are. But at the end of the day, there needs to be someone responsible for, hey, is the business actually growing? So yes, I fundamentally agree that it's the outcome that's important, not I guess the CMO. I'm fully, like I didn't know that the CRO is replacing the CMO, but like that makes perfect sense to me.
Mhm. You said something in there which was about running ads a lot, and you emphasized a lot, right? And I think that, this is something that I've heard you talk about, and I try to reinforce as well. I used to run a Facebook ads agency
Yeah.
back when it was only Facebook, before there were these other properties that they own. And we would start a campaign, and my client 2 or 3 days in would start getting anxious and frustrated and want to know what are the results. And my answer was usually, let's be patient and let's see, right? We need to get a certain amount of traffic through there, and let it tell us.
Right.
You have some strong opinions on this.
100%. I mean, your advertising should be always on. Don't stop it. You'll change the creative, you'll change the landing page, you'll change the initiative if there's some seasonality to it, or you change the product to it. But your marketing and advertising needs to be always on. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, when the advertising is always on, the algorithms get fine tuned to understand who your best customers are. Number two, you'll start to understand who your best customers are, not just the algorithms. And number three, you'll understand how to create a more perfect product market fit. And a lot of that has to do with understanding the creative messages to deliver, the products and services to deliver, and the audiences to deliver to. And all of that resounds in creating an iterative process that makes your business stronger. It builds the muscle so that you can be a more effective business to your customers. So yeah, uh, it's always on. You just never shut it off because you're going to learn so much more about your business by being in market. Advertising is a live focus group where your customers and your prospective customers get to tell you what they want from your business. You have to keep it on.
I, I heard you say that, there's this there's the cause and effect, right? And the result of that advertising being on is that you're going to hopefully make sales, right? Revenue is going to come into the business, but that there's differences between perhaps how one creative or one ad channel might behave in terms of who it appeals to,
Right.
what sort of conversion rates, what type of buyer it brings in.
Right.
I, there's the world that you're in, which is doing all of the advertising, work, and then there's the somebody seeing the results and making decisions at the other end. And I
Right.
and I often in this world that we have services and the client, some of that information is disconnected. And I'm curious to know how much insight you get, and of course there's this extra layer because you're serving agencies who are then in turn serving the client.
Right.
How much can you know about what's working best for the client to
Right.
bring the right kinds of sales, the right kinds of customers, the highest paying, most frequent, best value customer into their world?
It's a virtuous feedback loop. We don't want to work in a silo to drive performance. We need to understand what you're seeing on the other side as the client, whether you're the advertiser or the agency. We're our own. Like I'm really one of the things I'm most excited about on our business is the fact that we are marketers and advertisers for ourselves. So when we run our own advertising, we do the following: we run ads, we check back in, we look at the dashboards, and then we have someone that goes in and says, "Are these leads actually valuable for us?" It's not a question of whether we close them because that's more of a sales conversation. Are our sellers doing the right work? But the leads that we're bringing in, what's the value of those leads? Are they motivated to buy from us? So that's the question that needs to be asked that needs to be shared between the agency and the advertiser, right? You can do all the best work you need, but is it actually turning into sales? And then you uncover a lot of our job is uncovering those like nuggets of performance that really make a difference in how the campaign works and how the business grows. Like for example, we can drive leads for a client and we find out they're not calling them for a week and a half. Okay, well, you guys need to call. And that's not an advertising issue, that's a sales issue, but our job is to grow businesses. We'll run ads to a campaign and the landing page has the lead form at the very bottom of the page. Well, maybe put it at the top of the page. That's not an advertising issue, that's a landing page issue, but you need to grow the business.
Mhm.
The feedback loop is really for us context, communication, and consistency. That's what we do for our clients. We need to illuminate the why, the reason why things happen on our campaigns. Data for the sake of data, not that interesting, but data for the sake of insight, exceptionally valuable. So, we provide a dashboard for our clients, and it's a dashboard through Datarama. It's the best in breed of dashboards, which sounds silly. It's like the things you get excited about, but it is the absolute best type of dashboard you can have. It's interactive, etc. But it is not valuable unless the data is contextualized. So we want to give you information that you can take back to your boss, or if you're the business owner, that you can make decisions with so that you can understand which creative messages, going back to what we were talking about earlier, what works and what doesn't to drive sales. So that's the context, provide the reason why things are happening. The communication is just being available, being around to be a sounding board, to talk about ideas, to even just respond efficiently or quickly to email so that things can progress, right? Because one of the things that's important for me as a business owner is urgency. Do you value my business such that you will take immediate action to help me grow my business? And that's what I expect out of our people: immediate effective action. And then context, communication, and consistency. Day in and day out, are we able to be effective and do what we promise we're doing every day? Um, and so we expect the feedback from our client, like, is our advertising working? And we ask a series of questions to understand what's working and what's not. Are you calling the leads, and are they interesting leads? Are you getting sales? Are they high value sales, for e-commerce campaigns, or are they low value sales for e-commerce campaigns? How's the order value changed on your campaigns? So we're a little like, I know we do advertising, we get paid for advertising services, but we're a little bit of like a business consultant. We're a little bit of a strategist. We're a little bit of a therapist, a little bit of a coach, and we like to illuminate opportunities for clients. And we may not always be able to be there to sell you something. I'm not there to sell you landing page optimization services or SEO services or strategic consultation services or CMO services, but I sure as heck can tell you the systems you need to ensure that your business is successful.
So first I want to just say kudos to you for going a step further than a lot of other folks who are in the same space that you're in. Um, I'm curious to what extent are clients compliant with like participating in those questions and appreciative of what you're aiming to do with them. And here's the reason I ask. I've worked with many businesses over the years who really don't care about the answers to those questions. They're like, your job is just to run the traffic. Your job is just to get the phone ringing or the
Oof.
clicks to the website. Don't bother me about this other stuff. That's my business, not yours.
Yeah. I mean, look, we don't have many of those clients. I can't actually think of one client that's like that with us right now. Maybe it's just the people we attract, but we attract people who want to work with us because they value the help that we can provide. Look, if you want to run $500,000 of media and you don't want to talk to me and you just want to talk about advertising, 100% happy to do it. Where do I sign up? But I don't know, like it just feels like the magnitude of responsibility is greater than just running traffic. So we do it.
Well put. Good. You brought up something before we started recording about the importance of testing
Yeah.
creative. And I mean, I see it front and center, sort of mixed in with all the different places where you run advertising, digital audio, out of home, connected TV, native ads, and then right there, front and center, creative testing.
Yeah.
Speak to me about that a little bit.
That's, I haven't sort of like productized the idea yet, but it's to me that's like a big part of the engine. Look, when we run campaigns, when any business runs campaigns, whether you're running social media advertising or just posting on social media, what you need to look for, you need a strategy, you need to know where you're going to be successful. That's one component. Once you're running the campaign, the successful point here is going to be learning something. You, of course, need to drive sales or leads or demand or whatever the thing is that gets money in the door. That's table stakes. That has to happen. To make that happen, the systems that you're working with need to learn about your what makes your business tick and what triggers buyers to spend their money with you. So that's how this learning and testing is happening anyway. All we're doing is really formalizing a testing framework so that that knowledge and that insight and that context doesn't just live in the platform, and it also doesn't just live with the media buyers. It has to live with the business owner or the CMO or the person at the client that's making things happen for the business. And so this creative testing framework sort of like institutionalizes this idea that there will be testing, there will be feedback from the testing, and we will elevate that insight so that the client understands what's happening with their campaigns. And the output of this creative testing framework is really like understand the products, services, offers, insights, audiences that really resonate with the business so that you can do less of what doesn't work and more of what does work in a very simple way. In a more tactical way, what does that mean? That means if you're selling 5 products, one product might be far more important to your business than the other 4. And that one product may be the one that you maybe weren't thinking about, but like people sure buy a lot of it. So maybe consider not spending your time and effort doing this other stuff and focus on the one product that people want a lot of, even if it's lower profit, because you can sell a lot more of it, by the way. So that's one perspective. Another perspective is testing creative messages. What works better? People's faces, which usually does, buildings, hands, your product being used. Does a static image or a video or an animated image work better? And it's not always animated or video. A lot of times it's static. Then it's a question of what type of imagery in the static image really pops and resonates, right? It's a matter of language. When we talk about language, we're talking about positive language or negative language. Positive would be things like, um, I'll start with negative because that's where my head is at right now. Negative language is don't lose out, don't forget, don't get sad, get happy. Positive language is here, win with this, get this, don't, anything that's positive. I'm not
Mhm.
there in my brain right now, but um, so your business will benefit if you do this. So it's a positive spin on the same message. Long form text or short form text. And by the way, I want to point out there's one sort of like thing that needs to be noted on this. Long form text or short form text. There are people who write literally paragraphs in the ad text on Meta, and that works. And then there's other companies who write like one line, and that works. The key thing to note in all of this is that different types of humans want different type of messages, respond to different type of messages. So as a result, we need to understand generally what works and then put into the market, flood the marketplace with different type of messages to provide, to give different types of consumers ways to connect with your brand. An example would be if you only write short form text, some people just won't respond to that because they think it's not enough or they think you're not serious about it. I'm just making, whatever the
Mhm.
consumer psychology is. So you're missing a bunch of people who would actually buy your product, but you're just not talking to them in the right way. So give them long form text. By creating both, you have opportunities to reach both types of businesses, consumers in ways that they want to be spoken to. So our job is really to facilitate this learning such that we can perform for our client and drive business results. And also they need to know what's working so that they just know that's what should be happening.
And I think that's quite an important lesson about varying and mixing up the different type of advertising that you're doing. There's obviously a science to it because there's understanding how to um, read all of the reaction response to it and not overwhelm the public with a lot of different options and have very thin data to make
Sure.
decisions on. So if you're sort of an entry level advertiser
Yeah.
and the budget only goes so far, I imagine you have a more restrictive range of ad types that you're putting out there because you need to make sure that there's a significant enough amount of data to sort of guide what you should be doing.
Yeah, the process is I think the lowest you can really spend to be effective is probably $500 a month, maybe $700 a month.
Mhm.
And then you can scale up to like million, half a million, million, etc. a month. But the core idea is you are going to go through the same process every month, regardless of your budget, until the time comes that you literally can't spend any more money because you can't service the business.
Yeah.
So every month you're running through a creative testing framework that takes 3 to 4 weeks. You're going to find your one all-star ad, and that one all-star ad is going to be added to the list of your all-star team of ads, and you keep doing that until you can't spend any more money profitably.
The way that you describe it, it sort of harkens back to the old school copywriting days when, there's a control and the control is always there's always an effort to beat that control. So the ad is working, it's working, and then you're always trying to create other ads to see if you can get even better results than that one that is sort of at the top. Am
That's
I understanding that correctly?
precisely what's happening. That is
Excellent.
like that's exactly what's happening. You're going to run you're basically going to create your best ads, and then every month you're trying to beat your best ads, and either you beat it or you don't beat it, and you keep doing this until you just only have your best ads to run.
Robert, we're just about out of time. Why don't we do this? I'd love to get a quick understanding of who it is that you serve at Brill Media, and then, of course, we want to let them know where they can find you.
Absolutely. So our clients are businesses spending $1,500 a month to $500,000 a month. They're either agencies who do creative work, strategy work, social media content posting, any company that feels that they're not doing media buying effectively, but they want to offer it to clients and make money on it. We have a number of clients around the country who make money on top of our media buying services. And then we work with advertisers, and again, spending $1,500 a month up to $500,000 a month, um, with the goal of you need leads or sales. And we have a diversified set of clients. We sell all kinds of things in almost every vertical. So chances are we have experience in the work that you are doing. And people can go to brillmedia.co and visit our site, set a time to talk with me, and we can talk about how we can grow together.
Excellent. Well, again, that's Brill Media, Brill media.co. Robert Brill, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a fun conversation.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate it.
Indeed. Folks, you've been listening to More Perfect Marketing. If you know somebody who could benefit from listening to the conversation you just heard, please send them our way. In the meantime, I'm David Baer. We'll see you back here again soon. Bye bye.